Hi everybody, Kevin Gibbon with you once again. Welcome back to 2-Minute Reviews. Coming up, we look at two Star Trek episodes. One that was inspired by true events aboard a submarine, the USS Thrasher.
Your optimism is misplaced.
And the other I believe to be the inspiration for the Marvel character of Thanos. Stay tuned. What's up? Kevin Gibbon back with you once again. This week on 2-Minute Review, I'm going to give you my biggest gripe with Star Trek, the original series, and that is that they had an Irishman named Kevin.
Have no fear, O'Reilly's here.
And they only used him twice. Actor Bruce Hyde, who was appearing on Mission Impossible at the time, was used as an extra for the Star Trek episode The Naked Time. In this episode, the crew encounter a virus, which has the same effects as alcohol.
Roses all have left your cheeks. I've watched them fade away and die.
And Hyde's part was bigger than almost anyone else's on the show that week. They had to cure the virus and prevent the Enterprise from burning up in the strange planet's atmosphere. Hyde gets to show off his comedic abilities in this episode. This was also George Takei's, Sulu's, favorite episode, as he gets to do some fencing. He had to take a crash course in the sport to do it right. Spock's character becomes fleshed out more in this episode than any before it, as we see him coming to grips with his human side. It's also the first time we see the Vulcan nerve pinch. This is also the first time we see Nurse Chapel, who develops a crush on Spock. In fact, this is the only episode in the original series that featured all three major female cast members, Uhura, Chapel, and Rand, in the same episode. This would be Grace Lee Whitney's last appearance as human Janice Rand, at least production-wise. Star Trek The Next Generation attempted to flesh out their characters with a similar episode where the crew gets the same virus in The Naked Now, and the show was thought to have influenced the Red Dwarf episode Back to Reality. In keeping with Star Trek's penchant for gaining inspiration from real situations, this episode mirrors the tragedy of the USS Thrasher SSN 593. The sub was at max dive depth when a water leak in the engine room caused the nuclear engines to shut down. An emergency restart would take more time than they had. Without forward thrust to surface and the ballast valves frozen, the sub continued its descent until it reached crush depth. In this episode, the Enterprise engines were shut down and the ship was in a rapidly decaying orbit. An engine restart would take more time than they had. The Enterprise should have burned up in a giant fireball, but the crew manages to an emergency restart that saved their lives. The Thresher loss happened just 3 years prior to this episode. Later that same year, in the episode The Conscience of the King, Riley is working at the helm next to Sulu when he is suddenly transferred to engineering for some unknown reason. Spock wonders what's up, so he looks into the situation and discovers that one of the actors the Enterprise agreed to transport, Anton Karidian, is suspected by the captain to be none other than Kodos the Executioner.
With the exception of Riley and Captain Kirk, every other eyewitness is dead.
The former governor of Tarsus IV, Kodos ordered the execution of less than desirables of that world for the majority to survive. I am convinced that writer-artist Jim Starlin was inspired to create Thanos from watching this episode, as that character has pretty much the same goal as Kodos.
Kodos began to separate the colonists. Some would live, be rationed whatever food was left. The remainder would be immediately put to death.
But getting back to actor Bruce Hyde, in The Naked Time, Hyde showed off his comedic chops.
You know what Joe's mistake was? He wasn't born an Irishman.
In this episode, he gets to show some dramatic tension as he grapples with the idea of destroying the man that destroyed much of his home world. But he isn't sure if it's the right person because he was so young at the time. Is Karidian Kodos? Not even Kirk, who is also on Tarsus and older than O'Reilly, is positive. The original script doesn't even include Kevin O'Reilly, but rather the character's name was Lieutenant Robert Dakin, but when Hyde became available, they turned it into a second role for Kevin O'Reilly. Both episodes are great Star Trek. The Naked Time gets 4 stars for the cast performances and helping us flesh out the characters along with their arcs, plus build up of suspense, as the danger the Enterprise faces seems real and not a gimmick. Conscience of the King gets 3.5 stars for great performances, especially from guest stars Arnold Moss as Karidian Kolos and Barbara Anderson as Leonora Karidian. But my original point, why couldn't they have kept Kevin Riley on board for more episodes? An Irishman named Kevin on the bridge of the Enterprise. Why? Instead of having the nameless crewman every other week sitting next to Sulu, it could have been the Irishman, at least until the Russian Chekhov came aboard. Why, Star Trek? Why? Oh, well, at least he wasn't a red shirt and they didn't kill his character off. Anyway, that's all the time we have this week for 2-minute reviews. Hope you enjoyed the show. Going to be back with another show real soon.